Okay. What was the highlight of your past weekend?
Oh, wow. Let's see. Well, I would say my Saturday, in San Diego, Ocean Beach Parade kicks off the holidays. And it's a real small community. Like the best, I think, float was the OB hardware store. But
Oh,
the other thing is Ocean Beach is a real big vegan community. And somebody made a float that said it was the Ocean Beach milk supporters. It was something about dairy, and it was a
okay.
slight on the vegans, which was funny. And I'm not vegan, and I don't, I have a lot of friends that are vegan, but that was a real clever float. That was fun. And then after that, then we went to a paint party. Our friends, it's a whole bunch of adults doing a whole bunch of childlike things. It's a paint. They have an art teacher, and we're painting, and I'm always really bad at it. And somebody walked past and looked at mine and said, "Oh, that's a mess." So
Okay.
I got to have a little creativity and a little bit of festive fun over the weekend. What about you? What'd you do?
I love it. For me, I had a really chill weekend. I think my highlight is going to sound kind of basic or something, but I started reading this book. My students recommended I read the Lunar Chronicles. And I
Ooh.
started reading this book and it was really good. So I got into it so much that I went to the library on Saturday evening, like before I cooked dinner, tried to find book number two, couldn't find book number two. So finally I found on Kindle. You can sign up for 30 days. If you can read as many books as you want for 30 days. So I signed up for the free trial. So that was really my highlight. Besides that, had a really cool Twitch stream last night, cooked a really nice dinner on Saturday. Just pretty chill, just resting because it's been a hectic past few months. So
It's
that
been
was my
insane. Well,
highlight.
I love that you always make time in your free time to read and get into a book. And I know we're going to ask our guest his favorite books, and like
Right.
I think that's just what one of your awesome claims to fame. But
Yeah.
I
Well,
have a
thank you.
very important question before we get to our guest for you. Is your Mariah Carey event is
Oh,
coming up?
yes.
Can
It
you tell me
is.
like what is happening? What is the date of that? And what will
Yes.
happen? Like those people that are attending, what will happen?
December 16th, 10 p.m. Pacific time. It will be at these, I think it's called the Three Clubs in like West Hollywood area. I have myself and DJ Ivy, a
Yeah.
close friend of mine. We're going to be DJing all Mariah the whole night. We're also doing a toy drive. So bring an unwrapped toy to the place and we're going to donate it to, I believe it's a homeless children's shelter. So we're going to do that. That's where we're donating the toys to. And we're just going to play all Mariah all night. It's fun. Her song just went back to number one on the Billboard charts, All I Want for Christmas. So it's back there. It'll probably stay there for another 2 weeks. I will tell our guests that I'm a big Mariah fan. As you can see from right behind me there, or wherever it is, wherever it's over here, the Mariah poster there. I have the little Funko Pop up there too. So I'm committed. So
Man, that
that's what's at the
Mariah
Christmas
Christmas
party.
song, that's a
Yes,
gift that keeps on giving.
it keeps on giving and selling, and it's just amazing. 20 some years later, it's amazing.
It's amazing.
Um, yeah, yeah. So that's the details of the party. I'm so excited, and we're gonna stream it also on Twitch if you want to stay home. And I've just been inspired, so I can't wait. Hopefully, it'll be an annual thing. I think it'll be annual, and I'm ready to go.
I'm ready to go too. And I know this is our last show, 2022. We'll be back in January when we'll talk about that at the end. But if anybody missed any of the other shows that we did, they can go on our previous LinkedIn channel or my Sales Tales. My If you go to Mandy Graziano Sales Tales YouTube page, I've got
Yes,
all of them linked on there. And do you have them on your YouTube channel too, or do you have them
I
somewhere
have a
as
few.
well?
I have to continue to upload them, so I do have them. I have to continue to upload them. So yeah, yes,
Okay. All right. Well, let me know and I'll comment. I'll share that with everybody too later so everybody can see where we started, where we ended, and where we're
yes.
going. Yeah.
Progress. I love it. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Heck yeah.
Why don't you tell us why you are so excited about our guest today? Because you're very excited,
I am.
and just kind of we'll use that as an introduction, and then bring him onto our virtual stage and have the conversation get started.
Okay, sweet. Well, I am super excited for Chris Cano because I was a guest on his podcast. He manages this amazing podcast. He's a host. It's called Hospitality Leaders. And in our industry right now, the number one thing we are all talking about in hospitality is staffing. And
Mhm.
Chris just so happens to be the COO of Upshift, which is a hospitality staffing company. So we're really going to get into it today. And he's also a hospitality veteran. He's been the general manager and an operator of so many hotel brands over the years, the Ritz Carlton, the Hard Rock hotels. He's got a lot of experience. I hope he shares some of his fun hotel stories because those are always the best. He's a
Yes.
dad of some fur babies and a dad of some real humans. He's from Ohio. Well, he lives in Ohio, and I'm from Ohio. So there's a lot of bonds here. I'd love to introduce you to Chris Cano with Upshift.
Yes. So we're gonna give you some applause. Hopefully you'll hear the applause from me. All right. All right.
I
Hold on, let me check
forgot.
that.
I forgot about one thing.
What'd you
He's
forget?
an author. He's just like you and I, Amani. He has
Yeah.
a book too. His book
Okay.
is If You Build It, They Will Stay. I love that. It's a little feel it. Is that a little
Okay.
Field of Dreams reference, Chris?
Yeah, but for employees, right? Because staffing is what we do. Employing is what we do.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's see. Where shall we start with our questions? We talked in the green room about being from Ohio. Why don't you share with us maybe really quickly one of your most favorite hotel stories that would make us be like, oh my gosh, that happened? So share us like one of your favorite hotel stories, and then we'll go from there. Off and running we go.
I think everybody's got a million stories, right? And it's when you say famous hotel stories, right? The first thing you have to figure out is, do you want to say something that's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that happened, or a completely amazing, like heartwarming, hotel story, right? So we'll go with the completely amazing, heartwarming hotel story around the
Oh,
holidays because that's where we are, right? So when I worked for Ritz Carlton, we had I was in New Orleans, absolutely amazing property. This was pre Katrina, and it was one of those where you make all the little girls wishes come true, right? So she was staying with us for the holidays with her family, and she had a whole laundry list of things that she wanted from the city or wanted to see or wanted to be a part of. But because it was the holidays, there were a lot of things that were open and a lot of things that weren't open. And the team, just everybody just came together, and whether it was something we could take her to, get her set up for, or bring
mm,
physically to the building, it was almost like a week full of fun for not only the team, but for her as well. They always say, Ritz Carlton, you can go above and beyond in the service of your guests, and I will tell you, uh, around the holidays, there's nothing more than that than being able to walk into a building and be embraced as family like on day one. It's absolutely amazing.
aw. I
Great
love that.
story.
Was that a part of like the Make a Wish Foundation, or was that somebody that you found, or they apply for it? I mean, how did you find that? How did you find somebody to make wishes come true for?
Literally, just a little girl walking around the lobby one day was talking to us,
Oh,
and
that's great.
yeah, she was just asking a bunch of questions, and all of us were walking around, and everybody kind of just stopped to listen to what questions she was asking because it's the holidays, not too busy. It just kind of took off from there. It was fun. It was a little something for us all to get into for the week.
Power of curiosity. I hope she realizes like, hey, if I ask questions, I might get wishes granted. That's a that's a pretty
Yes.
powerful thing to learn as a child,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, it is. So when we look at like your extensive experience in hospitality, you worked in South Beach, New Orleans, Columbus. What other cities?
DC.
Okay, nice. What hotel in DC? That's where I'm from.
I was at the JW Marriott, right downtown,
Oh yeah, 13th and what's it called?
Pennsylvania.
13th Pennsylvania. Yes. Okay. Okay. Fascinating. Which city has been your favorite to live in and why?
Again, very loaded question, right? The pre dad version of me really loved New Orleans.
Mm,
I absolutely love New Orleans. It's a magical city, and so much history, so much culture. People are amazing. Lots of fun, obviously. But then I'll be honest with you, dad life, Columbus, Ohio is actually pretty amazing.
mhm.
It's got to be like the easiest place to live. We literally have everything here. And if you can deal with the cold, because it's like 29 degrees outside right now, but if you can deal with the cold, it is an absolutely beautiful place to live.
I love
Okay.
that.
Very
What
cool.
about
I love
sports? Are you a Cleveland fan? Are you a Cincinnati fan, or who's your sports team?
Yeah, I run the full gamut, right? I've lived in a lot of places. And so let's see, I am unfortunately a Cleveland Browns fan.
I'm right
That
there
one
with you,
hurts.
man.
It hurts
It
every week.
hurts.
Um,
Hurts. Not this
better
week,
part of
but
decades. Yeah, it was rough. Nebraska Cornhusker. My parents grew up in
mm.
Nebraska, and so I mean, back in the '90s, 2000s, it was great. We were awesome.
Yeah.
Little rough
Yeah.
times. We're excited about where we're going now with Matt Rule. My dad's in LA, so I was always been a Dodgers fan.
Mm.
So always picked up the Dodgers, and I actually grew up in San Antonio, so always been a Spurs fan. So when I tell you I'm all over the place, there's not a geographic location. It's just stuck with a list of characters over the years.
All right. Well, let's kind of the burning question. We should start with this one because this is going to lead us down many avenues. Is
Rip the
what is
Band-Aid
your
off.
yes? What is your opinion on staffing within hospitality currently, and why has it been such a challenge post pandemic?
I think there's a bunch of contributing factors. One, obviously the volume coming back has made everything really challenging, right? So we went from dead stop. I mean, I was working as a GM in a hotel where I was the only person in the building doing literally everything most days, to all of a sudden you're selling out every night. Everybody wants to come back, and it's not like it's corporate business that's generally easier to service. It's all leisure,
Right.
and so
Right.
you look at the I think I saw the other day 1.4 million open jobs in hospitality right now in the U.S. And I think a lot of that is contributed to volume. Um, and then the other side of that is, there are people who want to work in hospitality. But going into the pandemic, hospitality is a very rigid business.
Mhm.
7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7. Everybody could name off the times. You had to be here every weekend, every holiday. I mean, and I can say it now because I'm not running hotels anymore, right? But part of the problem is people were very willing to pivot out of the pandemic, right? Everybody had a really open mind. Okay, we're gonna pivot, and then it kind of slowed, right? Business came
Mhm.
back, and uh, people went right back to the 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7. Got to be here every weekend. Got to be here every holiday, and I think that the industry is kind of at a stuck point where it's got to get creative with
Mhm.
uh, what it offers from a staffing perspective, and it's got to ditch a little bit of the traditional norms to get it kind of boxed in.
Yeah. So, I mean, we talk about this a lot too. Of like, we've talked about like the awesome things people are doing to recruit, standing on the rooftop of their building, using signs, posting it on TikTok, or people are training refugees, teaching English to refugees. A lot of people are doing it right. And then there's a lot of people that are still posting on Indeed, still posting on LinkedIn, or they're just doing it all wrong, or they haven't adjusted to what the market conditions are. So, without naming any names, like what are hotel operators and hospitality operators doing right now that's just all wrong? And like, what advice would you give them to get more qualified staffing or just more staffing in general?
I think one of the interesting things I've seen is that the ones who are doing it right know what they want, right?
Mhm.
So they know if they need a desk agent, they're looking for a set of personality traits. They're not necessarily looking for a
Mm,
skill set, right?
yeah.
It's a set of personality. People in housekeeping are the ones that are doing it right are looking for that people who want that feeling of security and stability, and that's who they're going after. People who are not doing it or having challenges right now are kind of throwing everything against the wall and seeing what sticks, right? Somebody comes in and they're
Mhm.
like, "Oh my gosh, they applied. This is great. Bring them on."
Mm,
And then they don't work out, and then you turn them over again, and you have to start from scratch. And you're not
yeah.
you're not identifying the traits that make those positions valuable, right? So, if you're looking for a housekeeper and you see somebody's got a high turn rate, they're going to turn with you as well. Like,
Mhm.
it's a hard job. It's a really
Yeah.
hard job.
Yeah.
And while the
Artist.
wages may be getting better, right? It's still a really hard job. So you have to find somebody who's got that, who wants that stability, and that's what you can give them and really lean into it. So it's really interesting that, the people who are doing it right are identifying the best attributes of every position and finding a candidate to fit versus just literally hoping that somebody walks in the door.
It's so funny that you say that because a couple episodes ago, we interviewed a woman who runs a kitchen, basically. She runs a meal delivery service. And she said, I stopped looking for skill set and I started looking for people I want to hang out in the kitchen with. And I think that is such a really smart thing. That's exactly what you're saying. what are some of those questions? If somebody's looking for a specific trait, are there any questions that you recommend people ask candidates in the interview process, or any buzzwords that pop out when they see it on an application or resume that you could, advise people on?
I think a lot of it just involves what they're personally engaged with, right? So if you are asking the behavioral questions, right? Like, tell me about a time when fill in the blank, those are absolutely great. And they give you a lot of really good insight into what somebody will do in that job. But you also have to remember to ask them, what did you like about your favorite job?
Mm,
What did you like about your favorite leader? Tell me about your
mhm,
favorite person you ever worked with. And if you start hearing any of the things that involve your business in any of their answers, you're probably on the right track. But if you know for a fact that you are rigid in how you do everything and they're talking about flexibility, it is not going to be a good fit no matter how much you want it to be.
mhm,
And vice versa, right? And so I think if you really start to dig into the individual and dig into what really motivates them and inspires them, and they consider successful in their career, and just even what they like to do, you're going to find a lot more engagement, and probably, like you said, people you want to hang out with versus people that just feel like they're coming to work every day.
it's
Is there
powerful.
is there a company that you might admire in terms of the way they approach staffing and hiring and interviewing and cultivating their people?
You know what? It's funny. I think that large companies, by and large, and I'm a Marriott guy, right? So I'll use Marriott for an example. Marriott does it well at a high level, right? And the where it gets off the rails a little bit is when you get down to the individual site levels, right? And not even the
Mhm.
site levels, but the department levels. I can't tell you how many phenomenal conversations I've had with general managers that are tuned in, directors of rooms that are tuned in, department heads that are tuned in, and then it gets to the supervisor, and the
Mm,
supervisor is completely disconnected from what's going on,
Mm, mhm.
right? And so organizations that do it well right now, these large organizations, it's hitting every single level, and it's not just words on a wall, right? It's not just from Ritz Carlton. It's not just a Credo card, right? Everybody feels it, and everybody's a part of it. And if you skip any link of that leadership chain while you're going down, you're going to find yourself just that's where you're going to get caught. And if you lose yourself, especially like the supervisor level, the line level leader level, you just destroyed your business because all that effort, all that thought, all that money you spent at this level gets completely destroyed by somebody, still getting paid hourly and is responsible for leading and carrying out your vision.
yes. Like how do leaders not lose touch with their heart of their staff, their line level, their supervisors? How do they stay in touch, and how do they not lose that connection with them? Have you seen anything out there that's going well in that area?
Well, some of the traditional stuff always works, right? Being somebody now who works completely remote, I lament not having this anymore, but being
Hmm.
able to, lead by walking around is a huge piece. And when you lead by walking around, you have to get involved with the people, right? You have to stop and have the conversations. You have to watch what they're doing. Sometimes it's just a matter of standing there and observing how the flow of your business is going. And then when you see somebody doing something right, you have to capture it. When you
Mhm.
see something that's not going right, you got to involve people to be able to come up with a solution. If you just start dictating solutions yourself, nobody's going to buy in, right? And I think that people who are doing it right today, uh, those leaders are foregoing those traditional, hour, 2 hour meetings, the exhaustive executive meetings and things like that. And what they're doing is they're walking around, right? They're
Mhm.
they're having the conversations, they're standing in the kitchen during a busy turn. They're up on the floors during busy turns for housekeeping. They're standing
Mhm.
by the front desk just to greet guests. And
Yeah.
and those are the things that are making the difference, not just for the guest experience, which is what everybody always says is what that equals, but it's the employee experience, right? One of the things I always loved about that is, when you're standing around, you're going to learn so much about that individual, and then you're going to be able to personalize that experience, right? I think you mentioned books earlier. There was a book put out a long time ago called, not a long time ago, it's like 10, 15 years, called
Long
Corporate
time.
Lattice. Yeah, it was called The Corporate Lattice, right? It was a Harvard Business Review published book. But one of the phrases they always used was the mass customization of the employee experience,
Mm.
right? And so it's being able to have an overarching vision of how you're going to work with your team, but being able to be around enough to customize and engage them at where they are, and like we always say, where they are, not where you are, right?
Mhm.
So that piece is really interesting.
Okay. You mentioned in your answer that now you work 100% remote compared to when you were on the floor in the hotels for 10, 12, 14 hours a day. What would be like 3 tips you would give someone who's coming from a similar environment, who's used to being on the floor in the hotel or in a business, in an office for 10 to 12 to 13 hours, that is now going to 100% remote? What tips would you have so they can still be very successful personally and professionally?
Yeah, one, I would say, figure out your communication channels. When I joined this company that I'm with now, Upshift, we have a ton of communication channels, right? You've got Slack, you've got email, you've got video conference. Forget it. You've got all kinds of channels, right? And so understanding what each channel is used for is really important, and understanding where people want to connect on those channels. You know, Short messages, really fun, but you still have to schedule calls. You still
Mhm.
have to do meetings. And if you're doing this all day, I probably spend 10 hours a day on video chats, which is obnoxious. And you know, i- i- telling people, you know what, I'm going to be off camera for this one. I'm just going to be on the phone. Like, there's power to that, and I think everybody appreciates that, because you can only stare at yourself so many hours a day and not start to have real issues. So I would say one, communication channels, understand them, understand how to best use them, and understand how your team connects with them. Two, you have to get crazy about your habits, because otherwise that creep into your entire life will happen. Right? I've got
Mhm.
2 kids. I've got a wife who's an attorney. I run. Like, I've got all kinds of things that I like to do, and I very easily could skip all of that and just keep working.
Mhm.
But I have crazy habits surrounding some of these things, to make sure that everything, kind of doesn't necessarily stay in its own lane, but fits where it's supposed to. And then the third thing, honestly, if you're going from an office and you're working at home now, uh, you have to understand influence, right? Because it was very different when you were face to face with somebody. Influence was generally, built by that connection of just physically being present, right? And if you were a director, general manager, executive, whatever that looked like, you had the implied influence, right, based on your position. Well, there's not a ton of influence that goes with a talking square on a TV. And so, you know, a lot of times you have to figure out what that influence is, and a lot of times that involves giving and getting, and really that trust exchange that gets built. So, if you're working on your communication, you've got crazy good habits, and you understand that influence exchange, that trust exchange, it's going to be a lot easier. And it took me like a year to figure this out. So I really hope that cut down somebody else's time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
that's
Go ahead.
powerful because like influence is powerful and how we have exerted our influence or gained influence in terms of being a thought leader in different industries has really changed since COVID. And I think some of these social media channels have helped with that. I think you just spoke at a forum of future leaders, or I did I write it down here? The Future of Lodging Summit. Does that sound familiar?
It does.
So, in speaking at something like that, what are you doing to establish your thought leadership or your influence leading up to that? Like, how are people finding you? Is it, how are you handling your LinkedIn account? How are you handling your building your own personal value in the marketplace to be able to be asked be a speaker at a conference like that?
Yeah. So, honestly, I'm not very good at it. I'm going to be, I was laughing with Amani before this, he's like, so what social channels do you have? I'm like, I have LinkedIn. Like,
Mhm.
that's all I
That's
got.
fine though.
I was like,
One is good. Yeah.
but to be honest with you, a lot of it's just relationship building, right? So, like, that conference was the Ohio Hotel and Lodging Association. We do a lot of work with OHLA. We're founded in Ohio from a company perspective, and so we do a lot of work with OHLA, and we have partnered with them for a long time. And so, getting the opportunity to be able to have conversations with people in that organization and also their members, as I was a member for a while, gives you the ability to establish a base of understanding. And so I think whenever, they ask me to speak or they ask me to show up at something, they have a really good idea of where I'm coming from. Um, you know, that particular summit that you spoke, that you referenced, one of the interesting things about that was we put college students educators and executives all in a room together, and we did a number of different sessions to kind of get the conversation going. And from that, I think the interesting thing from the literally across the board, the collegiate students that really surprised everybody was things that we had talked about coming right out of the pandemic, right? Which was, your wages aren't going to be what attract people. They have to be, table stakes. Like you have to pay people a decent wage in order for them to want to come to you. But you also don't have to be the highest in the market if you've got a great place to work, right? If you understand what's
Mm,
valuable to them, if you are putting the time in to make sure that you have some flexibility, because everybody needs flexibility. And the one thing that caught my attention on that one was empathy.
mm,
I was shocked at how many times empathy came up for everybody in that room. It was, I'm a college student, I've got a full boat of classes, and I'm 10 minutes late to work and I get written up. I
Mm.
was trying to get there, the class ran over, and nobody wants to hear it, right? Or, yes, I do have to take an extra day off for a test, or some of them were going into other examples about families or incidents outside of work and things like that. And it was just crazy to me on that particular panel, how often empathy came up. And, to swing it back around to your original question, how you establish influence in order to be able to find yourself on things like this. I think it's being able to listen and then being able to be willing to have the conversations, because a lot of
mhm,
people will hear a conversation without a like a very defined solution, and
mhm,
will shy away from it for ones that have answers, right?
mm,
And so, I'm generally pretty good at starting conversations and just seeing where they go.
mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Now you
empathy.
mentioned students, and recently, as of about 2.5 years ago, you finished being a student yourself as you got your master's from Ohio State. What was the inspiration behind getting your master's, and how do you feel that is has currently helped your career?
Yeah, so I was 40 when I started my MBA, and I had started looking around and realizing that there's a slight chance that I had been taught finance wrong my entire career, because, like
Mm,
everybody in the hospitality industry, you were taught finance by the person who's right above you. And so, how did they figure it out? Well, they were taught by the person right above them. So it's a diluting structure as it goes down. And so I'd been a general manager for a decade at that point in time. And I was really interested in a lot of the things that were happening in entrepreneurship and finance. And so instead of, going down a Google rabbit hole, I just decided to go back and get my MBA. And it was great. It was a great decision. I absolutely am happy about the way that it turned out. I can tell you that the way I look at business now is completely different. And I know that
mm.
there's a stigma around education these days, generally involving cash and how that works out. And I will tell you, it's not cheap to get your education. Um, but from that, what I do recommend to everybody that works for me is find a way to educate yourself, even if you're not going back to school, because there's so much stuff available online now that you can. I mean, you can get an you can get an MBA level education on like Udemy for, you know, $45. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty solid on a lot of this stuff. So yeah, but like I said, I think that going back and understanding I had a miss in what I had learned over the years was huge for me, and then figuring out a way to correct that.
So what
Interesting.
is that? I'm curious. How are you doing business now after getting your MBA versus how were you doing it before? And just maybe a nugget of some that aha moment when you're in MBA school and or my husband calls it B school. When you're in B school and you were like, oh, like this is the better way to do it. Can you think of an example?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, honestly, revolves around innovation,
Mhm.
and innovation in not only, like having an idea, but innovation in capital, innovation in, uh, uh, you know, being able to engage the resources you have around you in a completely different way. A lot of
Mm,
times, people look at the resources that have flooded their periphery, and that's it, that's all that's there, right? I can
mhm,
go ask my boss for this, I can ask the owner for that, I can take out a loan to do this. And then what you realize is, once you broaden your horizon, there's innovation everywhere involving pretty much everything. So, you can expand your scope, and once you expand your scope, you start to see everything completely differently, and you realize that those things that you had always thought were the only ways to get things done are really not the only ways to get things done. And I think that's what's setting people apart is their ability to be able to innovate in every space, not just come up with the next great idea and be the next billionaire or whatever.
Mhm.
Interesting. Fascinating. I think this is a good segue now to ask about your podcast. Tell us about your podcast and what inspired you to start it. As a podcast creator myself, I'm really curious to hear your story.
So coming out of the pandemic, I just started working for Upshift, and the founders, we had got together and we started talking, and we realized there were not enough people having a conversation about what was happening, um, with everything, labor, supply, just the general mental health of people in the industry, and so they supported the idea, and we went out and launched the podcast. And the idea was, let's talk to everybody from line level leaders to CEOs, and let's find something that they're passionate about talking about, and make sure that we mix in some things that would add value to people in the industry. So a lot of what we're doing right now is talking to executives and line level leaders about what really moves the needle for them, for their teams, what they're seeing in the field, trends, and I think that a lot of those things, going from the obvious stuff when we got out of the pandemic, right? Like there's some very, very similar themes. And I think I made it through about 10 episodes on that before we had to pivot and start doing something else because nobody wanted to talk about the pandemic anymore. Everybody got to
Yeah,
like a point where they're like, yeah,
movon.com.
we're
Yeah.
done. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're done with that. Right.
Mhm.
So then we started talking about what interests people in it. And it was really a unique experience for me to see what really the labor pool for hospitality is, or the demand for hospitality is. I mean, I'd always pictured restaurants and hotels, cruise ships, things like that. But really, anybody who has somebody who talks to another person is pulling from the same labor pool.
Mhm.
And so, whether I'm talking to the head of a museum in Georgia, or the CEO of a massive real estate company, i- it's all the same. They're all
Mhm.
looking for the exact same people, and everybody's finding a way to be able to differentiate themselves, innovate, and create that connection with not only the clients, the guests, but also with the teams as well. So it's a really interesting running theme across the way there.
And it is
Now,
such a great podcast. Amani, it's Hospitality Leaders. Have you ever listened to it?
not yet, but I'm going to listen to it. Continue to do my
Okay.
research because I love a good podcast.
Hmm.
And I'm curious. My follow up, and then I'll turn to you, man. Is like what I learned from doing podcasts for over 40 years is there's so many lessons within the individual people we speak to. When you think about how many episodes you've done, and I'm always a sucker for good lessons. What are like some of the maybe the three lessons that you've learned that surprised you the most from any of your guests when you were talking to them, or in terms of what you learned from the process of doing a podcast? I'll open it up to that also.
Okay. I'll tell you what, one of the ones that stuck with me, I was talking to the CEO of Whitewater in North Carolina, and we got into a conversation about purpose. And everybody always talks, it goes back to the Simon Sinek, start with why, find your purpose and everything like that. And he and I got into a really interesting conversation that surprised me and really helped me put more of a fine touch on how to be able to actually engage purpose in the workplace, because
Mm.
it's very cool when you talk about it. But what he kind of what we got down to is that purpose equals you know what you value and the effort you're willing to put into it. And so if you are working with somebody and you see that they value a part of your business and they value an overall goal that your team has, and they're willing to put the effort in, they are purpose driven. And those are the people you want to hold on to. And if you're struggling with connecting somebody to your business, you got to find out what they value about your organization, and when they're willing to put the effort in to be able to get there. And so, like, for me, that was like a lights on moment for me about engaging people at different levels, and making purpose an actual thing, not just a great TED talk from Simon Sinek, which is where I think most people get that from.
That,
Um,
purpose is important though, because that's like we're all talking about trying to find the best staff right now. And it feels like everyone's bewildered, like, I don't know what to do. It's like, show what you value, right? Show your culture, show you are a culture keeper. That's going to resonate with somebody, that's going to connect to their purpose. And now you have a brand new person that you're recruiting to the hospitality industry that may have come from a completely outside industry, but just because you're getting vulnerable and sharing a little bit about your culture, your purpose, you're connecting with somebody on a deeper level and you're building the industry as well. So I think purpose is right on. I'm really glad I haven't listened to that episode. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And then, you said overarching themes, right? One of the other themes that I am always amazed by is every time I talk to C-suite executives, it always comes down to the client or guest experience.
Mhm.
And you would think that they would be so disconnected and that it would just be talking points and boilerplates, but the ones that are fun to talk to and the ones that are doing well and have really thriving businesses are ones that genuinely believe that. And you can tell when they're going through there that they care about what they're doing,
Mhm.
that it's not just lip service, that that they actually answer emails and messages from people and so that piece for me was really refreshing. I think coming from a massive corporate structure where you're not 100% sure what the top's thinking, because you're so far down you can't even see the top, right? And so I think that was an interesting point. And then just from the podcasting side,
Yeah.
I think it opens up a ton of opportunities. And like I'll give you a great example is I'm taking time off right now because we've got like 13 recorded episodes, right? So like we're gonna let this roll for a while. And one of the things that came up was actually out of that OHLA summit was, we've heard what all of the executives and managers are saying. Has anybody asked the kids? Has anybody asked the
Mm.
people who are coming into this industry who are maybe 1 or 2 years into their job? And
Mhm.
so I'm going to take most of January, and that's what I'm going to do is interview college students, people in their first few years, people who are working on staffing platforms, right? Like ours,
Mhm.
and just have those conversations to see what they're interested in. Because I think that's answering a question that everybody's looking for, right? Which is, are we missing something? What aren't we seeing? There's got to be something else here to make this work.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so
Yeah.
powerful.
Me
It's
too.
so
I have
great.
some bunch of students I can recommend to you out here at California State University Fullerton. So let me know.
That'd be great. Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love that. I'll send you the thing we're gonna look to do. But yeah, I'm gonna do it in January. We're gonna piece it all together, and we're gonna get some of these executives on the spot and try to get some answers from them.
I love it.
I
Excellent
love
idea.
it.
Just tremendous. Yes. Over to you, Mandy.
Well, just and also I'm an instructor at SDSU, so I have some college
There
students.
you go.
Between
Yeah.
Amani and I, we could just fill your show. We can fill your show list with college students coming out. Some of them are still like young, working in the hospitality industry. But going back, you talked about like when you first started with Upshift, this was something that you wanted to do, the podcast. Tell us, what is Upshift and how do people get involved with your company, and how did you get involved with it?
Yeah, Upshift is a flexible labor platform. We mostly work with hospitality industry, so we're hotels, colleges, large venues, caterers, and we help connect businesses with really a flexible team that is designed for them, not just designed for the masses. So it's a lot of fun, and I got involved in this because I was sitting by myself at the front desk at the Marriott in Columbus, Ohio, trying to figure out how we were going to staff everything because I think like everybody knew when you open the doors, it was going to come back like that. And so
Right.
we were trying to figure out how to staff it. We had local agency Upshift who I had heard about and talked to a couple of times. And I literally messaged the CEO on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, I got a question for you. Can you give me like 10 minutes?" And he put me on the calendar the next day, and he and I started talking about strategies for rebuilding the hospitality industry. And after a little while, it got really exciting, and I decided to come on board and see if I couldn't help connect labor with the hospitality industry instead of just influencing out of one small building.
Great
Awesome.
story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how do people use it? Who uses Upshift and how do they use it? What's their behavior pattern?
Yeah, so most of our upshifters will pick up shifts for 2 to 3 days a week. A lot of them use this as supplemental income. One of the things we found is a lot of people. I think we're just over 60% of the people on our platform are women, and it's
Mhm.
because it's safer as opposed to ride sharing or walking up to somebody's door.
Mm.
You can go to a hotel where it's safe, right? Or you're going to an arena or a college, and you have a very different experience than ride sharing. And what we found is that a lot of our upshifters are people who were displaced from the hospitality industry following COVID, and they like it, but they had to go find another job. And so
Mhm.
what they're doing is they're finding their way back in 2 3 days a week, earning a little extra income. And then what we've recently found is that there are people who want to do this 40 hours a week,
Mhm.
and they are working 40 hours a week on our platform, choosing the jobs they want and the shifts they want. And I think everybody's going to be surprised here. Weekends and nights do really well on the platform. Like, it's not
Mhm.
just no, not everybody's on the platform looking for 9 to 5 Monday through Friday jobs.
Mm.
There's a real big range, and so we source clients with great places to work that need talent. And we've done really well with like I said, hotels. We've done really well with stadiums. Colleges are a large part of our business. So and then
Mm.
we've also started doing fulfillment centers.
Right. Yeah,
Because
that
everybody's
makes
doing that, right? Yeah,
yes,
I
that
mean,
makes sense.
Mhm.
I
It's a
mean,
2 hour delivery.
Amazon
Yes.
like lives at my house right now, so the dog doesn't
All of
even bark at
ours.
the Amazon guy anymore. He's just like, "Hey, Joe."
Yes.
Hey, Joe.
I
Hey,
got a
Joe, what you
box
got
right
for me?
here.
That's right.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. Like, I have to, because I have a good amount of college students that are about to graduate or just recently graduated. Maybe they have a full-time job, maybe their hours have been cut, they're looking for something different, but this is a good way for them to say, let me try to work a couple shifts at an arena, see what it's like. Let me try to work maybe in a hotel just to get a taste of it and then go from there. That's a really, really interesting concept that I like. It's kind of sparking some things in my mind, as you can tell.
And it's funny because you get people at all levels, right? We have we our age range is really wide. And so, like, great example. We had I was talking to the executive chef at a Hyatt property, and he says, "Yeah, I grabbed an upshifter. He came over for the day, and it turns out he was the guy who was the opening executive chef for this building." And he
Wow.
just
Oh
brought him
my
on as a prep cook for
gosh.
the day. The guy was just looking to pick up some hours, so he wasn't sitting at home by himself. And so
Yeah.
I hear things like that, and everybody thinks of kind of the gig labor, or as younger, whatever. But honestly, it spreads every age range, and people use it for so many different things. Um, it's a really interesting addition to the industry.
It is. It is. Very interesting. Okay, so we're at about the quarter till mark, which is when we turn it over to you and you get to ask us each a question. So I'm a little worried because you're an experienced interviewer, so we'll see what you have to ask us. You can choose who you want to ask, whether it be Mandy or myself first. The floor is now yours. Who is first for you?
You know what? I'm actually going to turn a question around on Mandy that she asked me, because I totally deflected that question. So, Mandy, you are obviously a very busy person right now. How are you managing building your brand across all of the platforms you're on, across all the media you're in, and still have a job? Like, how are you doing that? Because I don't know if everybody asks you that, but they should.
That's funny.
Great
I am.
question.
It's a good. Amani just asked me that a couple weeks ago. Actually, it's a good question. I am active. I'm very active, doing a lot of active things. But I believe in time buckets, and I have a really clear vision of. I have three businesses, right? I have HPN, I have my coaching and speaking, and then I have my book stuff. And I have a really clear vision of where I want all three streams to go. And I plan out my week. On Sundays, I go grocery shopping, I do meal prep, and I plan out my week. And I have time buckets. So I have a time bucket on Wednesdays for 1 hour where I go on LinkedIn and I engage. I don't post, I engage. So I see, like you have a lot of great posts. If you guys don't follow Chris, follow him. He's got a lot of great posts. and then I'll add comments here or there, and not just to barf knowledge on people, but to really engage. Like I want to hear what people are saying, and then I want to share some information too. So I do time buckets like that. My calendar to the naked eye would be petrifying to anybody because it looks really full. But for me, it's just a roadmap. It's a plan. I have my stuff that I do in the morning where I get myself straight, where I wake up, I take a walk, I take care of the dog, I do the workout, I connect with my husband before we both go to our separate offices in our house, and then I start my day. And I have my buckets of time with HPN where I am doing looking for new customers, or I'm fulfilling my existing customers. I'm finding the perfect hotel. I'm answering a million questions. Every RFP that goes out for HPN, I could source like 50 hotels, and all 50 hoteliers have a question. And if I've got like 50 RFPs at one time, that's 2,500 questions coming my way. That's a lot. So I have a system where I manage and how I answer that. But I really, really believe in time buckets, and I believe in breaks. I think burnout is something huge, especially in our industry. But I think it's everybody. My husband and I were just talking about this morning. Everybody's burnt out in every industry at every level. And I think the way to manage burnout is to schedule breaks. So in my calendar, I have breaks every 90 minutes. I take a 10-minute break. And that 10-minute break is not to scroll on my phone on TikTok, although I do love to do that, but it's to go outside, look at the fresh air. When I'm in Ohio with my family, I can't go outside. I, swing on a swing. I'll go down and talk to my parents. So you have to take breaks during the day. Like you said, you run. You have to find whatever outlet that is for you. If you're not active, physically active, that's fine. Read a book. I mean, I think taking breaks, minimizing burnout, and time buckets, that works really well for me. And I'm constantly adjusting. That's the other thing is I'm not so rigid that I'm like, this is how I'm going to do it this week. Some weeks I don't get it all in, and other weeks I get it all in. And I think the last thing is just setting really reasonable boundaries. I mean, I have anxiety disorder. I've had it my whole life, which I didn't know. I was just diagnosed in 2015. And last week I had a really bad anxiety day. It was a day where it was physically taking over my whole body. And I had to tell a couple clients that had some deadlines on, like, listen, I have anxiety disorder. I had to set the boundaries with them and say, I'm not going to get to this today. I will get to it tomorrow. You're first on my priority. So, that goes back to your empathy conversation. I think it's time buckets, taking breaks, recognizing what's important to you, like my husband, my dog, my family, like those things are important. And then setting boundaries with your coworkers, with your vendors, with your customers. So that's how I do it for myself. Now, I don't know, ask me 6 months from now, I may have a totally different answer, but that's what works for me. And I'm really open to constantly changing what works for me too, based on whatever's going on in my world.
Well, I think that's I can empathize with that a lot because I run my life a lot of the same way. I'm just
Mhm.
not nearly as good with the social and the outward facing as you are. It's very impressive, but I think anybody who listened to that, it's definitely the time buckets are huge. The funny thing is it's time buckets, but not necessarily life buckets, right? Like people always talk about that
Yes.
work life balance, and if
Yes.
you go for that work life balance, you're always going to be disappointed because something's always out of balance. But if you just make sure it all works together, right?
Yeah.
Like it all has to feed into each other, right? It can't be
Yeah.
if you're trying to chop it up, it's never going to work.
And you got to stop shaming yourself too. I think people are, some weeks you just work more than your personal, and other weeks you're social and you're personal, and all of that balances out in the wash. I just think we have to stop shaming ourselves for like working too much, working too little, being present, not being present. I think we're all just doing the best we can, and just giving yourself some grace too. I think goes a lot into it as well.
Great
Absolutely.
answer.
Yeah,
All
good
right.
question.
All
Thank
right.
you.
It's my turn now. Go ahead, Chris. What
Yeah,
do you
follow that up, Amani.
I know. Drop the mic. You go.
So I've got a couple. So two parts here, Monty. So one, you've mentioned your students a lot, right? So what do you teach?
I teach entertainment operations. I teach strategic business seminar, which is like a company based class where we do case studies on companies, and then music business. So I'm the director, executive director for the Center for Entertainment and Hospitality Management at California State University, Fullerton. I also
Awesome.
full-time DJ as well. I put the two and two together, and an author.
Well, there you go. Nice. So you obviously are exposed to a lot of different students right now, and so I'm gonna ask you the same thing I'm gonna start asking them, right? Which is, what are they looking for as they start to graduate? Do you all have any of those conversations, especially I imagine as you're going through some of the case studies?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think what they're looking for is a company that they can build like trust with. They can trust like their boss, their supervisor. They're looking for a company that's going to be balanced. That's one of the challenges we have is that they tend to stay away from hotels type jobs because they just hear the horror stories from the past about the hours and everything's included. They also really want to learn about like navigating the I want to say like the political arena within companies. Like how do I get to know like the CEO, or how do I understand who I should be talking to, and they really don't understand like within any business, any company, there are politics involved, and who do you talk to? So they're really curious about how that works. Um, I think it's 75 to 80% of my students are first generation college students. So they're also kind of
Mm.
wondering, how do I go do my own thing where my parents want me to work at the family store or the family business, and how do I kind
Mm.
of make my own path? That's a question that comes up many times. They want to do something like work in entertainment, work in hospitality, but they parents want them to either be a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant. And so I get a lot of the accountants in my class because like it's a one of the classes, the strategic business seminar, that's a case study class, is based on like every student has to take it to graduate. And so I get a lot of accounts that they take my class because they know I have a different background. So they ask a lot of questions. They want to see what's going on. And the number one thing they say is, "Well, my parents want me to work for I think it's a top four now, top four accounting firm, but I don't want to do that. But I have to kind of please my parents. What do I do?" That's probably the biggest question that we have the most in-depth discussion on, and it comes up every semester.
I'm sorry, but now I got to know what do you tell them? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just like drop the mic on that question and then walk
Yeah.
away. Like, oh, we're out of time here, guys.
George Costanza, and I'm out.
That's crazy.
I tell them I tell them you have to really, I say, like, you really want to focus on what you want to do, because when you're going to please your parents in 5 to 7, 10 years, you're going to be miserable. Like, right now, you already don't want to work at a top five accounting firm, but you're doing it for your parents. I understand maybe they're supporting you, maybe they're paying for college, but you have to, with all that we've learned in your career, you have to focus and try to get into a business that you love. I say this is what you should do. I have this one student, Kevin. He wants to work at he's a hospitality double major, hospitality, entertainment, and accounting. But we talked, he's got a great goal. This is what you want to do. Why don't you focus on working for an entertainment company like an HBO, a Disney, MGM Studios, in their accounting department? So you're working for them in the accounting department. So you're getting kind of best of both worlds. Or work for a smaller company where maybe they give you some accounting responsibilities, but you also have a little bit more creative aspect as well. I think what really uncovered just different options for them is we did this exercise 2 weeks ago now. It was the week before Thanksgiving, where it's like the Artist Way Day. We kind of go through a lot
Mm.
of self improvements, personal development, which they've never really been exposed to. They know nothing about that kind of like Simon Sinek. To them, it's new. They don't really know about Simon Sinek. So I show them a few Simon Sinek videos. I show them Les Brown. We go through this workbook. We ask questions, and that is when we really get to. I'm encouraging them to. There's the first question is, name 20 things that you love to do. You love to do as a kid. And I say the moral is, make sure that when you're working and when you're building your life, you continue to do these things, because as we get older, we just stop doing them. And I said, in order for you to be happy, make sure you keep doing them, because then you'll enjoy life more. So that's kind of a long answer to what I tell them, but that's basically what I tell them weeks and weeks. We talk about it consistently and it comes up frequently. So that's my kind of answer, is try to, first of all, go for what you want to do. And if you can build maybe, accounting in there or legal or something, there's options. Even in the music industry, there's, collecting royalties. That's an accounting job, but you're working for Sony Music. You're working for
Mhm.
Warner Chappell. done. You've bet the best of both worlds. So when I show them these jobs that are out there, I never forget I had a student, I think Sandra is her name, and she was so focused on like getting a financial job. But then when I talked and showed them how to break down royalties for the music industry, she's like, oh my gosh, that's what I want to do. I can do my finance and be in the music industry. It was like a light bulb went off. And that's my goal with each student in the classes. So yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, their parents just want to know they're going to be secure, right? It's not necessarily the accounting
Basically,
job; it's
yes.
just that they're going to be financially secure, right? And so,
Mhm.
if
Right.
you can show them the path on how you're going to get there,
Mhm.
that's great. Absolutely
Yeah.
awesome answer, man. Thank you very much.
Of
Don't you want to be a
course.
student? Don't you want to be a student in Amani's class?
I
And he
do.
spins, and he's a D. So there are some classes he says where he'll like run some tracks. Did I say that? Drop some track. What do you do? What do you call it?
I mean, you communicated it properly. Yes, we
He
during the
drops some
semester,
tracks.
one time, usually one time, we'll have a virtual class. It could be bad weather, it could be like the pandemic before. So to start off the virtual class, I'll just DJ a quick 10-minute set. But they don't know. It's a surprise. So when they're logging on the Zoom, they think, okay, I'm gonna keep my camera off. He's gonna start class at 4 o'clock. But this semester, I think it was the couple weeks early November, the 1 o'clock, 2:30, 4, and 7 o'clock classes. I started with a 10-minute DJ set each time, and they loved it because they heard about it, so they were waiting for it. But yeah, so yeah.
That is
Awesome.
awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, I gotta get some of your list, man, because my kids are just embarrassed by what I listen to. So yeah, I gotta get caught up here. It's pretty bad.
We'll talk. No worries. So Mandy, final question before we let Chris kind of let us know the best way to keep in touch. I have one, but I'll let you ask, or I can ask. Mine is always I'll ask you my question is like,
You
if you
ask
could
your
talk
question. I know we
up
want
to
to.
18-year-old Chris and give 18-year-old Chris advice based on what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self?
Uh, yeah, I probably would have told my younger self a little bit along the lines of what you tell your students right now, right? Which is, you got to figure out what you're excited about, what gets you excited, and how you're going to get there. Because I think I knew what made me excited, and I think I had a goal on how I wanted to get there, but I didn't know why I wanted to do it. Right? Like I'm a hotel kid. My dad's a GM, and so I thought. I mean, I tell everybody this. They say, "Why'd you get into hotels?" I said, "Well, I could have. I visited my dad every summer for vacation, and he just walked around the pool all day, and people called him Mr. Cano. I thought it was awesome. We had restaurants. It was great, right? I thought that was a hotel industry. Uh, and so when you're 26 and you're a GM, and now what? Like
Yeah.
you got like 40 more years to work, and you know where you wanted to be. You knew what you wanted to be, but you never took the time to figure out the why. And so I think, figure that piece out, because I think that's where you end up languishing is, you set a single sided goal for yourself. And then as soon as you hit that goal,
What's next?
what's next? Right. And then you
Mhm.
flounder, right? Usually a very decisive, very calculating, very driven approach to something. And then you're like, well, I'm here. Now what?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that I would have told myself to figure out what I actually wanted, not a position I wanted. See how that ends up.
Great
All
advice.
back to
Robin,
purpose. It's all
yes,
back to
Robin M
purpose.
and Vicky,
Mhm.
hello. Thank you for tuning in with us. What's the best way for people to keep in touch with you and to follow you, your journey, and everything that's going on with Upshift?
So for me, follow me on LinkedIn. I think I said this before. It's the only social media I have. But I also link to a lot of stuff for Upshift on my LinkedIn. You can also follow Upshift, on LinkedIn. We have an Instagram account, but we do most of our stuff on LinkedIn right now.
Got it. I dropped that link in the chat. We have the Upshift link on the ticker. I'll just say, just really, it was a great talking with you. Excellent advice, great wisdom. I love hearing more about like Upshift and what it's kind of doing. It was good to talk to you because I could learn more about it quickly. So I'm really even more intrigued. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being an ambassador to our industry and for also thinking about different ways to help us meet the staffing needs. So that's my thanks. Mandy, over to you.
I mean, thank you for your time. I know you're feeling a little under the weather. So thanks for hanging with us. Thanks to your wife for letting you hang and your kids, donating your time after hours to hang with us. And everything you're doing for our industry is powerful and needed. And so just keep going. Thank you. I'm really grateful for you and your business, and just keep going.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. Like you said, a little under the weather. I've had food poisoning all day, so just making it through this was a win in and of itself. But I'm excited to have seen you again. And Amani, it was great meeting you. Great
Likewise.
conversation. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Chris.
Give you a round of
Happy holidays,
applause.
Chris.
Happy holidays. Okay. What's up next for our schedule, Mandy?
Well, we have our whole first quarter of next year locked and loaded with guests.
Yes.
So we've got January, February, March all ready to go. I think there's an announcement going out later this week, but this is our last show of 2022. I think in a couple weeks we're going to release a best of 2022 video. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And then on January 9th, which is our next show, we have Maurice Cherry. And why don't you share a little bit about Maurice Cherry, because I don't really know much about him.
So Maurice is kind of like a legend in like the graphic design space. Just a really phenomenal, talented African-American graphic designer, but he does more than that. Good speaker, just very innovative. We're so fortunate to get him on the show. So super excited. Can't wait to talk to him. He's been internationally recognized. So he's going to be a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of kind of giving us a different way to look at ad campaigns, logos, different graphics. So I'm excited to sit down and really learn from him and see what he has to share and what's going on with him. He's been through, a lot during the pandemic in terms of roles and different things he's done. So I'm hyped up about talking to Maurice Cherry. He's going to be a good one.
Awesome. Well, hey, it's been an awesome 2022. I'm glad we did this, and I'm stoked to do more. And I'll see you. I'll see you in 2023. And well, Amani, I'll see you next week. But everybody else, we'll see you in 2023. Happy New Year, and have a blessed holiday, and enjoy life and connections with your family and your friends.
Absolutely. Round of applause for us, and we'll roll out.
Roll out.